The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
Hey there, it's the Origin Edition for the Coach Curl podcast. Welcome to episode 121. Today we're talking State of Origin.
Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. Finish on. Coach Curl.
Great job, guys. Coach Curl, we love you.
Hey there and welcome to episode 121 of the Coach Curl podcast. Today we're talking about State of Origin. Now, State of Origin here in Australia, if you're listening from other parts of the world, is one of the biggest football games of the year. It's rugby league at its very, very best. And I know I'm breaking up what makes a great leader. Last week we talked about the service aspect of what makes a great leader. And our next aspects are all about the transformative mind. But I just can't miss the opportunity to share an opinion and share some thoughts around State of Origin here in Queensland. And it's always interesting to see the different approaches that both states take. So for those that don't know, it's Queensland on the east coast of Australia against New South Wales on the east coast of Australia. And Queensland and New South Wales are the dominant states here in Australia in the game of rugby league. It's called the National Rugby League. And the highlight of the season every year is State of Origin. Now, to give a little bit of history, Queensland and New South Wales, rugby league started around 1908 here in Australia. Queensland and New South Wales played each other on traditional terms. So if you're playing rugby league in Queensland or if you were playing rugby league in New South Wales, you could be selected for the state where you were playing. So if you were playing in a Queensland competition, you'd be selected to play for Queensland, and if you were playing in a New South Wales competition, you were selected to play in New South Wales. And New South Wales became the dominant state, and they had some advantages over Queensland at that particular time. They went decades without losing a series. So it's been, in 1980 there was an upheaval and there was a bit of a new process put in place, and it was called State of Origin. So because what would happen is Queensland players would go to Sydney clubs, and Sydney clubs were the richer clubs. And of course they would then come back and get selected in the New South Wales side to come back and beat Queensland. So there was a bit of a groundswell of opinion that we went for State of Origin. So in State of Origin, you either play for the state in which you were born or the state in which you had your prominent first experience playing high-level rugby league. So in a nutshell, that's the way it works. So we get a real passion around which state, and people can elect states based around where they initially played high-level rugby league. So usually that's a high-grade schoolboy football. So wherever you are playing in the state is usually where which state you choose. And I guess in some ways I straddle. I'm one of those rare breeds. I straddle both sides of the border, but I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Queenslander. But my actual origins are from the state of New South Wales. I was born in a little New South Wales country town called Guyra on the New England tablelands in northern New South Wales. Now, some would argue that should make me a New South Wales Blues supporter, but I'm not, because I support Queensland. And back when we moved here, there's not a day goes by where I don't thank Mum and Dad for moving to Queensland. We moved to Queensland when I was about 8. So, and as I said, not a day goes by where I don't sit back and thank and be very grateful for that particular move. But I remember really clearly listening and with Dad to one of the old interstate games where Queensland were playing New South Wales, and it was based around where you were playing. not about where you considered your origins. And Dad was cheering for Queensland. And in his eyes, we were now Queenslanders. We'd moved there, we'd made the choice to move there, and we were now Queenslanders. And that's a lesson that has sat with me. I mean, that would have been, I was 8, and that lesson sat with me all my life. So I'm a Queenslander. And I've never been swayed to change, even though there were times where Queensland was severely challenged. And, you know, when Phil Gould was coaching some of those best New South Wales sides, they'd win 3 years in a row. But I was never swayed to change allegiances. And one of the fascinating things that we see in Origin every year is the build-up and the different approaches taken by the teams. And this year it's been even more interesting because one of the leadership tactics that I've seen this year have been quite interesting, to say the least. They've been certainly different. And I'll start with the New South Wales team, because the New South Wales team won last year's series and they deserve to be favourites for this year's series. So last year New South Wales picked a team for the ages, one that should be the core for many winning seasons to come. They had this core group of outstanding footballers in their team. And that should have been the core of their football team moving forward. And in many ways it has been for this particular year. But the team has seen some changes. Some of it because some of the players picked last year aren't in form, so they weren't selected. And some of the new debutants that have been selected purely based on form. So 5, in fact, including a 19-year-old who's only played 10 NRL games, and that's the National Rugby League competition here. Played 10 rugby league games, and it's very hard to... NRL games. He's played, of course, a lot more rugby league games than just the 10, but it's very hard to argue against the team that they've picked. But the interesting aspect that I see is in the selection of one of their key playmakers. Now, Nathan Cleary was the halfback in last year's winning team, where he accompanied the evergreen clubmate of his, James Maloney. And now James Maloney is one of the most competitive players in the NRL. And Nathan last year played his role. He steered the ship, he played them around, but he wasn't a standout in the side, and that's coming from my perspective. There'd probably be other people that would say something similar. But he had the steadying hand of his more experienced clubmate and teammate next to him in that playmaker role. Now this year it's different because their club team Penrith has been woefully out of form. And Maloney has been axed from the Blues. So the evergreen, ultra-competitive James Maloney isn't part of the New South Wales team this year. But Cleary's been retained. Now, it's clearly a case of getting Cleary back into a winning culture, back into the winning environment that will be the New South Wales camp. And that's fine, and it's a good strategy. But this time it is certainly different. And one of the key aspects is his partner isn't there. Now, in Maloney's place is a player that has been in outstanding form, one of the form players of the competition, a guy called Cody Walker, who's a bit of a journeyman and has really never given up on the dream of playing really top-level rugby league. Outstanding role model, outstanding footballer, outstanding form. And he's got really strong club connections with another one of the key playmakers in the New South Wales team, and that's a guy called Damien Cook. But club is always a different beast. Playing a club game is a different beast to playing Origin. Origin is it's a big step up. So it remains, in my eyes, an avenue of risk for the New South Wales side to be teaming up Nathan Cleary, who is out of form in his club team. He hasn't played well at all this year. He's strung against a couple of good games recently, but he certainly hasn't been in outstanding form. And then teaming him up in a key playmaker role with a person that's making his debut. So it is an area of risk for the New South Wales team. But will it be a weakness? Of course, it's going to remain to be seen. But overall, if I was the Queensland coach, that is where I'd be focusing on that particular area. Because Origin is a different beast to our club sport. But that brings me to my next point, and this is where Queensland are doing something completely different this particular year, because Queensland aren't talking about New South Wales, and they've been forbidden to talk about New South Wales and the Blues. Now, Kevin Walters, the coach of Queensland, is a fairly knockabout bloke from Ipswich, and he's a legend in Queensland. But he's taken some advice and some mentorship from one of those high-performance coaches. Now, I'm not going to mention this guy's name, but he seems to have taken the credit or played a role, or claims to have played a role in a number of winning sporting teams here in Australia, and that's all well and good. But, you know, a coach, a mindset coach, a life coach, a business coach, a leadership coach, actually only plays a role. And that's in usually just a role to create some self-awareness and get the person doing and aligning behaviours back to what they should be doing. And never do I believe that a coach should be claiming credit for that. And that's a personal viewpoint. That's a personal feeling of mine. My clients get a lot of success, but it's their success. I'm just a little cog in the journey. But this guy has claimed to have helped a vast array of teams. And once again, it's, you know, this whole concept of guru just really does my head in at times. But anyway, Kevin Walters has instilled this edict within the team that the word New South Wales or Blues will not be uttered from his team. Now, I understand in coaching we have to focus on what we have control over, and focus should be on individual and team performance. Absolutely. And not focusing on the team that we're playing. Because by not focusing on the team that we're playing, it actually does remove some of the aura that we may have in our opposition. It's actually a tactic that I've used in the past myself when I forbid one of the teams that I was coaching from calling one of the opposition players by his nickname. Now, his nickname was Bull, right? So whenever my team would see Bull just lining up to have a run, they'd say, "Here comes Bull." But by doing that, they were creating their own subconscious behaviour around that. So I forbid them from calling him by his nickname. And I said, if you're going to call him, you're going to call him by his last name. And we did that. And ultimately, we actually won that game. And the player concerned on the opposite side certainly had a game that he would forget. Or remember, whichever way he wanted to look at it. That actual player went on to play some high-level NRL and actually played for Queensland in State of Origin. So he certainly had some resilience about him, and he certainly was able to cut through the mind games. But the game that counted was the game that my team won, because we put him off his game by not calling him by his nickname. He had a bit of an aura about him as a footballer. So we forbid to call him by his nickname. And it took away some of that fear factor that my players had. It worked. But this year, what I've seen with Kevin Walters, for example, is that he was animated in his dealings. He's been animated, really animated with the dealings with the press. He's been stating things like, Queensland will definitely win. We've picked a side that will definitely win. We expect to win. So he's been really, really focused around this concept and belief of we're going to win, we're going to win. Now, but pardon me, I thought we always picked a side to win. So I'm not quite sure whether the message to the everyday punter is actually the one that we should be sending. But anyway, so now I understand that the belief is built from the edict. So this belief process of publicly saying that we will definitely win has been something that this super guru has instilled within Walters, is that, you know, you've got to have this belief. And, you know, there is so many good things to say about belief. So many good things. I know you need to believe in yourself to win. And self-belief is huge, huge. And part of that belief is the concept of affirmations. Now, the kind of affirmations that work, from my experience, is those quiet affirmations that we undertake that cement into our subconscious. Because the only person that you need to convince that you're going to win is you. That's it. The only person. And where I see affirmations that work, from my own experience and from experience with others that I've had contact with, people that I've coached, is when it's that quiet stage of affirmations. You're going through a process individually to etch it into our subconscious. So, not the public type of affirmations. Not the public type. Now, I've always admired the type of athlete that backs up their talk. You know, you see it with Muhammad Ali when he was in his prime, saying, "I am the greatest," but he was. I mean, there wasn't too many players boxers or fighters that could match him. You know, Anthony Mundine here in Australia is another one that I could actually really respect, because he did his talking through his actions, but he spoke a really good game. And he spoke a really good game that sometimes, or most of the time, ostracised and divided the Australian population. But in many, many, many times, he walked the talk. He backed up what he was claiming. I've always admired people like that, but they're a rare breed. They really are. And what concerns me with this tactic from Walters is the adherence to something that this guru has said. It's one thing buying into something as an individual. It's another thing to impose that buy-in on a team. So it's one thing to buy into it yourself. It's another thing to impose that buy-in on a team. And a team that's got multiple young players and debutants. It's been clearly evident that there's been a range of awkwardness and good humour, I guess, in some respects, where some of these young players in media conferences that are being goaded by journos. And the press call, once the journos and the press call knew that this edict was there was this, they've been goading these young players. And, you know, it's been awkward in many respects, but it's also been, I suppose in some respects, almost funny, almost humorous. But it's placed a lot of pressure onto these young players. And ultimately, from a subconscious point of view, actually makes them think of the opposition more, as they have to find ways to navigate their way around these conversations that are being put in front of them. So that concerns me. Now a couple of things. If this is true, I think it's really poor leadership from Walters. He's placed unnecessary pressure on his team in the lead up to one of the biggest games of the year, and in some cases, some of these players' careers. Now, players need to be ready, just like anyone, need to be ready for a change in mindset, a change of approach, and instilling an edict into the team based on a personal belief or opinion. I'm not convinced that it's going to work. And seriously, it's out of character for Kevin Walters. But I suppose one of the things that I've also got in the back of my mind is that while Kevin Walters is the Queensland State of Origin coach, his stated aim is to be a head coach in an NRL club. And for whatever reason, Kev seems to keep getting bypassed on those roles. So maybe this change of personality, maybe this change of character has come about through some of that frustration. I don't know. But there may be other things at play. And this is why I'm so interested to see what happens on Wednesday night when the game is played. Now, the edict from Walters may have been a tactic, okay? Because as we know, in most sporting contests, there's a little bit of pre-game drama or pre-fight drama or whatever sport that it is that you follow. And maybe this was Walters' tactics to shield his players. Yeah, shield his players from playing the game too soon, because often players get anxious and nervous appearing at press conferences or at media sessions and being continually asked about the game and the opposing players, and which often means that they've played this mental game well before kickoff. And these camps that they go into are usually at least 7 days, potentially even 10 days, some of them have been. So if you're continually being asked, how are you going to fare up against such and such? What do you most fear about the other side? Those sorts of things. The reality is that sometimes that mental energy can cause you to play the game well before kickoff time, which is interesting. So instead, what we've seen is the press corps focusing on the edict rather than the game. And maybe that little bit of awkwardness and, as I said, some humour is just the players having fun with it. I don't know. Maybe it is. And if that's the case, and it's business as usual and focus on the opposition while they're in camp, that's cool. In fact, it could be even construed as a masterstroke. So whatever is the case for both Queensland and New South Wales as we come into the game, ultimately the game will be played on Wednesday night. And as is always the case, hindsight will be the best teacher. So which tactic will win? Who knows, but I'm looking forward to the game. Hey, thanks for listening today. I know it's been a little bit of a break in our what makes a great leader, but maybe there's some takeaways in there for you, and especially also once you've seen the result of the game, you may be able to say which tactic may be able to work for you. Bringing people back into a winning environment, a winning culture, creation of that winning culture, or playing ducks and drakes, I don't know, from a public perception. Don't forget, big shout out to Think and Grow Business, improving the performance of people in business. We've got a really strong focus on personal, professional and business growth. Check it out at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. Don't forget, Seriously Simple Stuff to Get You Unstuck is available at Amazon, and where all good books are sold online. And potentially also where all bad books are sold online. But you can also get a digital download at tonycurl.com.au, which is my own author's page. Don't forget, 20% of every book sold goes to support the great work that Carter's Cause do in raising funds and awareness for kids and the parents and families of kids born with congenital heart disease. Our latest sponsor, Totally Builderall, just about to do a huge revamp. I'm going into the next upgrade of their platform, totallybuilderall.com. Sign up for their free 7-day trial. And as I said, they're just about to go to the next level, which means that there's all new pricing. So jump in now with totallybuilderall.com. It's a fully integrated digital marketing platform. You'll be amazed at what's inside, because I continually get amazed, and I'm so looking forward to the update and the upgrade. Don't forget, you are still standing. So where you are stronger, braver and wiser. And please don't ever forget the golden rule. Yes, you've got it. Just don't be an arsehole. I'll see you next week.